Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream, Sunday stream community chat with emphasis on community chat. Of course, I will share a news segment first, and then let's have a exchange of opinions in real time. And well, I already began exchanging opinions with Nikos, for example, on YouTube chat. But yet again, first news segment, then let's have a exchange of opinions. Today is, of course, 29th of June. Now it's 1 o'clock, middle of the day by Moscow time. And well, I have prepared quite a number of news on some major developments. And without further delay, let's start this stream. I will just remind your community that project, as many of you know, is completely subscriber funded, and without your support it would not exist. So if you like my work and want to support, you can do it. All their means for support, links to it are on this video description box and in the pinned comment. And dear friends, let's begin with the news segment. And of course, I will start with sort of breaking news that last night Russian armed forces conducted quite a large-scale, long-range, precise strikes on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kiev regime all along their Kiev-controlled territory. First time in a long time, there was a heavy barrage of missile and drone strikes in western Ukraine. And according to reports that I see from this morning, military and logistical infrastructure of Kiev regime was targeted in Lvov, Ternopil, Poltava, Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, Nikolaev, Odessa, Kremenchuk was also targeted, and many other areas, by the way. Kiev regime is claiming that they managed to intercept a majority of the drones and missiles, but they are lying as always. And there is plenty of videos on internet. Probably many of you have seen these short clips when significant damage was done to enemy capabilities, let's say that way. And this is not all. Well, according to reports, which is confirmed by Kiev regime itself, last night they lost another F-16 fighter jet. Kiev regime is claiming that fighter jet crashed and pilot died as a result of this crash. But by the way, this is not the first time when Kiev regime is claiming that jets are just crashing. This is fifth F-16 that they lost, according to reports. And almost every time they are saying that, well, plane just crashed. Okay, whatever the case, minus F-16 and the pilot, okay, I take that. Although, because this incident with the Ukrainian F-16 occurred during the Russian drone and missile strikes, I would not be surprised at all if sometime in the future we will find out that either Russian Su-57s or Su-35s, Russian fighter jets basically, were also operating simultaneously with during this attack, and well, they notice F-16 and launch missiles and intercept it. Because, I mean, it does not really look realistic that every time they are losing plane, those planes are crashing. I mean, come on, man, right? But whatever the case, minus F-16, good news. And as I said, dear friends, Kiev regime is confirming this information. Kiev regime's Air Force posted about it. And I shared information on that on my Telegram and Twitter X page. If you want to, you can read it in details. Also, on the progress of special military operation, we have reports about more and more settlements being liberated by Russian forces. For example, Dachna settlement in Dnipropetrovsk region is liberated by Russian forces. Clearing operation has been finalized. And let me show you on Dachna, where Dachna is. It's Dnipropetrovsk, by the way, and I guess this is the first settlement that were liberated by Russian troops in Dnipropetrovsk region. This is the Dutch tiny village, basically, as you can see on the map. It's just a one street, main street, and there are maybe a dozen or two buildings there. But nevertheless, it's a settlement, and it is liberated by Russian forces now. Also, we have reports that Russian armed forces also liberated settlement of Zirka in DPR, and also Novoukrayinka settlement, which is also located in DPR. Let me show you where these settlements are. So this is Zirka settlement, also relatively small village, just one main street, as you can see, dear friends, and there are maybe 2-3 dozen of buildings, maybe a little more. But this settlement is also under Russian control now, and when it comes to Novoukrayinka, this settlement, if I remember correctly, located on the southern side of Pokrovsk. And it is true, by the way, this is Novoukrayinka settlement right there. Also relatively small village, but nevertheless a very important one at this point, because as we all know, Russian armed forces conducting quite successfully offensive operations in the Pokrovsk direction, Pokrovsk-Mirnograd agglomeration area also, and the Russian troops are basically on outskirts of Pokrovsk. According to some reports, Russian troops, Russian DRGs already are operating in Pokrovsk itself. So progress continues, and as I said many times before, in no circumstances Kiev regime and its NATO backers will be able to regain initiative on any of the directions. They can send on suicidal missions thousands of their troops, but all they will achieve is they will just help Russia to faster to demilitarize and denazify Kiev regime faster. That's all it is, right? Well, it's not just DPR, obviously, not just Dnipropetrovsk or Zaporozhye sectors where Russian troops are conducting offensive operations, but lately Russian armed forces activated their operations in Volchansk area. This is the northern part of Kharkov region. Let me show you on the map this area, dear friends. This is a buffer zone that Russian troops were creating on the northern part of Kharkov region and continue to create. And this buffer zone is divided on two parts, as you know. One is the Lipsy direction, western part, and the eastern part is Volchansk direction. And reports are that Russian armed forces successfully cross Volchya River and establish control over the northern western part of this town that is located on the southern side of or left bank of the Volchya River. And well, before this offensive of Russian troops took place, there was significant artillery preparation done. And let me show you this video, dear friends. Some of you probably have seen it. This is Volchansk on the left bank. I believe that is the left bank, isn't it? So river from there is supposed to go in the Black Sea, right? So that Volchya River probably at some point enters Dnieper. So yes, this is supposed to be left bank of the river, and you can see artillery preparation of Russian forces, TOS flamethrower systems or Soltsepioka. Same flamethrower systems were used for this artillery preparation, and well, quite devastating strikes, isn't it, on points of concentration of Kiev regime's forces. And I believe this area is under Russian control now. And some reports are also suggesting that this is the case. Industrial part on left side of the Volchansk city. And once again, let's zoom in a little bit. and see what this area was. That's their area, by the way, this industrial part that was targeted by Russian flamethrower systems. And if this area is now under Russian control, then I guess it will not take too long before entire Volchansk will become under Russian control. It all depends, obviously, on what kind of plans Russian general staff has. That's been said. Let's continue with some more news. And I want to share with you this information that is coming from Ozzy Kozak, by the way. Many members of our community are familiar with this Australian. He's Australian citizen, I believe, and also become a Russian citizen, but he's been under heavy pressure from Australian government, and he still lives in Russian consulate, I believe. And he shared on social platforms information that US-made M1 Abrams tanks from Australian defense forces were spotted in Poland with their camo, by the way, on these tanks. These tanks still have Australian camouflage, and one may assume that soon, in about like months' time, probably once these tanks will be colored in a Ukrainian camo, these tanks probably will be sent to battlefield. But yet again, M1 tanks, US-made Abrams tanks, by the way, did not really succeed in anything on the battlefield. Usually they are just working as artillery pieces, because they can do nothing. They are just too heavy. There is so many other conflict line, contact line, and these tanks cannot cross bridges in many cases. Whenever there is a rain, by the way, these tanks just cannot move at all, right? Because they are just too heavy. And when I see this news, I remember statements from media reports in the West about months ago, which was based on statements of US military experts and representatives or the lobbyists of the US military industrial complex. They were not happy with the decision of Australia to send Abrams tanks to Kiev because they don't want to see more burned down tanks of the US, right, on the battlefield. And they know perfectly well these tanks, as it is the case with the German Leopard tanks or the British Challenger tanks. These tanks did not really perform as they were advertised, isn't it? So, I guess it will take, yet again, a couple of weeks, maybe months also, and these 40 to 50 tanks that Australia promised Kiev regime to deliver will end up somewhere on the line of contact, and then Russian fighters will take care of it. Right, and when it comes to topic of tanks, by the way, Russian troops quite successfully, as already said, are destroying Western military equipment. And let me show you a video of destruction of Swedish STRV 122 tank, which is basically kind of upgraded version of Leopard 2 A6, more heavily armored. So this is Sumy region, where Kiev regime sent its elite forces, also armored groups, to somehow slow down Russian offensive, where buffer zone also is created by Russian troops. And you can clearly recognize silhouette, isn't it, of the tanker. This is Leopard 2 and STRV 122. They look somewhat similar, but as I said, the Swedish version is just more heavily armored, and it did not help it, isn't it? This additional armor, it just did not help it. So, relatively cheap, like $200-300 drones can knock out this multi-million-dollar equipment like it's nothing. So that's why I was saying, by the way, when I was asked during one of our community chats if what I think about fate of tanks in the future warfare, and I'm not going to change my opinion. I think tanks are becoming more and more obsolete on the battlefield. At least their main battle tanks, as we know them now, they have to change. They probably will become, future generations of heavily armored vehicles probably more will look like assault guns than tanks, because they are just obsolete, man. And this tank, by the way, STRV-122, is one of the most heavily armored tanks that NATO can put out there in the battlefield. Maybe not as heavily armored as British Challenger 2, but nevertheless, extremely vulnerable. To continue, dear friends, RIA Novosti reported that relatives of the missing Ukrainian armed forces servicemen yet again rally in Kiev. So relatives of the Ukrainian armed forces servicemen who went missing in Kherson village of Krinky have come out to protest in Kiev. The publication Общественное reported. We have quote here from publication. They came to demand that the authorities speed up the search for their missing soldiers because they have been living in uncertainty about the fate of their relatives for a year now. And you remember, isn't it, dear friends, when Kiev regime was sacrificing literally thousands of its military personnel in Krinky area. Russian troops, according to reports, Russian troops neutralized thousands of military personnel of Kiev regime there in the Krinky area, in the Kherson region, and on the islands of the Dnieper. And the Kiev regime, until now, refusing to acknowledge their losses and all the killed military personnel, even if they retrieved their bodies of the killed military personnel. In some cases they did, in majority of cases they did not bother, but they are still hiding information. And their relatives have no option now to go out and protest. Let me find the Krinky itself, by the way. This is Aleshki settlement right next to bridge there, and Krinky must be somewhere here. This is Казачьи лагерь, and Krinky should be here, by the way. Yes, that's it. So this is the Krinky, by the way. There was heavy clashes in this area at one point. Kiev regime's forces did manage to cross the river and establish their foothold in a Krinky, and then Russian troops basically used this area as a trap, and Kiev regime was sending for quite a number of months thousands of its troops to further increase their presence, to turn this foothold into a bridgehead for potential further attacks towards Crimea, but they failed miserably. And as I said, probably no one exactly knows how many thousands of troops of Kiev regime were neutralizing this area, and their relatives now are demanding from government information, but I don't think they're going to receive any information from Zelensky regime. It's just not happening. To continue, dear friends, we have statements from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on a number of major topics, and let me read it for you. So Macron and Merz have completely lost their common sense and are trying to return to the times when Germany and France wanted to conquer all of Europe. Lavrov stated. In addition, the head of their Ministry of Foreign Affairs noted that German and Ukrainian Nazis are united by their attitude towards those they want to enslave. Some burned Jews, others burned Russians. He was referring to Nazi Germany, obviously, and Nazi Ukrainians. Also, some key points from Lavrov's statements. Russia is convinced that in order to resolve the conflict in Ukraine, it is necessary to stop the process of legislative extermination of everything Russian on Kiev-controlled territory, which is true. Moscow is open to first settlement of the conflict in Ukraine, but will not be ready for fraudulent approaches that European leaders are pushing for. Russia and Kyrgyzstan, he is in Kyrgyzstan now, by the way, I believe. Russia and Kyrgyzstan will jointly counteract their falsification of history. Russia is interested in the influx of labor migrants, but they must comply with the rules of stay in their country. Lavrov said he is in Central Asia right now, and on topic of Ukrainian crisis and Western proxy war against Russia, press spokesman of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, also made statements. The harsher the sanctions, the stronger Russia's recall to them, Kremlin spokesman stated. He also said that only logic and argument can get Russia to a negotiating table, no matter how many sanctions rabid and militaristic Europe keeps pushing. They would not succeed, Peskov said, and they did not succeed already, by the way. Right? With these sanctions, European bureaucrats harm their own fellow citizens or their own economies much stronger than they harm the Russian citizens or Russian economy. And this is factual, right? This is factual. Vzglyad newspaper is also reporting that the Russian president also commented on Western proxy war against Russia, and he stated that one-sided game with the West is over. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that the West has long ignored Russia's security concerns, and now their one-sided game is over. We have a quote from Russian President: "Everyone has been asking since this moment the recognition of the independence of the Donbas republics, also there are new regions, Kherson and Zaporozhye too, that joined Russia together with their Donbas. Nothing to be said about Crimea that joined Russia way before." Why? What happened? How it happened? What is their Western countries' fault? As if they were babies who were born only yesterday. This won't do. This one-sided game with the West is over. The military wants to increase its spending. Well, let them increase it. This also speaks of their aggressiveness. The head of their state noted. He also went to say about Russian military spendings, by the way, and he pointed out that, let me read his statement, quote, "The head of the state also commented on the situation with the military spending," and this is quote, "Yes, we have considerable spending today, 6.3% of GDP. If you remember, dear friends, a few days ago, one of the members of our community was asking me about, percentage that Russia spends, percentage of GDP that Russia spends on military. And I said that as far as I can tell, spending is about $150 billion in a year. And I was more or less correct. 6.3% of the GDP is about $160 billion. So I was not far away from correct number, right? And this is a lot. But one should keep in mind that we don't really have much option, isn't it? Entire collective West, with a very few exceptions, are waging war against Russia while sacrificing millions and millions of residents of this so-called Ukraine, isn't it? Former Soviet Republic. So we have to spend as much as necessary to protect country, to protect society. But Russian president did say that this is a lot. 6.3%, but well, do we really have options here? No. I want to remind you, dear friends, that in comparison to other countries, right? Especially collective West, Russian spendings, definitely does not gonna look like tremendous, because I remind you that U.S. President Trump wants a budget for Pentagon over $1 trillion for 2026, over $1 trillion, by the way. I was predicting that Trump will do this once he will get to office, and he's doing it, right? And the overall budget of NATO countries is probably like 15, 20 times more than Russian budget. When it comes to world, then US is number one with its spendings. Yet again, I mean, next year over $1 trillion. That's quite something. On second place is China, I believe, with about $300 billion on defense spendings. And Russia and a number of other countries are also in top five in this regards. But if you combine, if you take a combined number of military spendings of NATO right now and Russia, then this 150, 160 billion that Russia spends does not gonna look like a lot, because yet again, overall, West is already spending on defense and security $1.5, $2 trillion, which is, I mean, low. To continue, dear friends, we also have this report that, Putin was asked about, relationships with the US, and he went quite diplomatic on Trump. He spoke with great respect in regards to Trump, and some people may be upset about it, but yet again, I mean, Russian political school, Russian diplomatic school is different than in the West, right? And Russian politicians usually don't use a strong language in their statements, right? It's a Western feature, and they are bragging about all sorts of stuff. And Trump is a pinnacle of that, isn't it? I mean, every single day he is bragging about, I don't know, everything, by the way. Soon he will probably come out and will say that he stopped alien invasion, right? But anyways, let's go through this news. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he has a great respect for the US President Donald Trump, and praised his counterpart's efforts to resolve the Ukraine conflict, speaking to the reporters in Minsk when he was participating, as I reported earlier, in a Eurasian on the forum of Eurasian Economical Union. So speaking to the reporters in Minsk on Friday after a meeting of the Supreme Eurasian Economical Council, Putin described Trump as a courageous man who had overcome serious challenges to return to the White House, including surviving multiple assassination attempts. I have a great respect for the current US president. He went through a very difficult, complicated, and even dangerous path to return to power and to the White House. We all know that well. He is a courageous man, that's clear, Putin said. He also commented Trump's diplomacy, commended Trump's diplomacy in the Middle East, as well as his efforts to resolve the Ukraine crisis. We, of course, value all of that. I believe President Trump is sincerely striving to resolve the conflict. And, as I said, dear friends, many people may not be okay with these polite statements towards the Trump by Russian president. I'm not on same page with the Russian president on that. I don't have any respect for Trump. I don't think he's a decent human being. He is a scum of humanity. I think so. This is my personal opinion. And Trump should be investigated for crimes, potential crimes that he might committed on Epstein Island. After all, Elon Musk made a statement, and the investigation should be conducted about Trump's connections with Epstein and all the crimes that criminals were committing there. And well, Trump is a scum of humanity, by the way. I have no respect for that dirty animal. But yet again, I'm not a president of Russian Federation, right? I'm just a citizen journalist. I can feel free to express my opinion in a way that I find it, in any way that I want to, right? But if I was official, obviously I wouldn't be able to speak like that, because yet again, political class and diplomatic school in Russia demands to operate in certain ways and to be very diplomatic and polite in statements, and that's usually what is happening, right? So therefore, I don't share Putin's take on Trump, and I don't think Putin really respects Trump. He is just being diplomatic. That's it. I mean, what you expect him to say, that Trump is a freaking criminal and scum of humanity, as he is? No, Russian president would not use that language. I will, right? Because I'm 100% convinced Trump is a criminal, despicable human being, garbage, and should be in prison for life. This animal, by the way, insulted Russian people. He stated that with his statement that Russia is conducting strikes on Kiev-controlled territory for no reason. While saying so, he also said indirectly that lives of Russian people don't matter. And then he went to insult Russian president. He called him a crazy, remember? And that was the last drop, by the way, to me personally. Before that, I was more or less, like being diplomatic in my language in regards to Trump. But since then, no, fuck him, man. That animal should be in prison, man. So that's it. That's my take. Like it or not, but that's how it is. To continue, sorry for my French, but, RT is reporting that UK's Foreign Office comments on incoming MI6 chief's Nazi family links. UK Foreign Office has defended Blaise Matravelli, the first woman appointed to lead the MI6, one of their most powerful, unfortunately, terrorist organizations in this world. British Foreign Intelligence Service, so-called, after media reports revealed that her grandfather fought for Nazi Germany. The ministry claims that Matravelli's controversial family background has only strengthened her resolve to protect the country from external threats. Yes, I mean, being Nazi in UK is okay. And dear friends, let me remind you that if you search on internet, I mean, to understand that for British royalty, for British aristocracy, Nazism is and the fascism is not anything new. Search for pictures of younger former Queen of UK. That was zigging on the photo, by the way. Zigging, right? So therefore, obviously, Nazi past is nothing for UK's aristocracy and so-called elites, isn't it? They were always cooperating with Nazis and the fascists, always. And if Nazi Germany basically did not attack UK, British Empire at the time, then I guess London will seek dialogue with their Nazi Germany, and they were seeking dialogue. By the way, let me remind you also Munich of it was 37, if I remember correctly, when UK, France, when British and French leadership elites agreed to divide in favor of Nazi Germany, Czech Republic. In the Western media, almost there is no talks about that, about responsibility of and guilt of London and Paris for creating this monster that Nazi Germany has become, right? And so Yes, they are defending this element individual who is also, I guess, Nazi, this Machiavelli. On Thursday, the Daily Mail published a report revealing that the first time that Machiavelli, who is set to become MI6 director in October, is the granddaughter of the Konstantin Dobrovolsky, Red Army defector who joined Hitler's forces and was nicknamed the Butcher for the atrocities committed in Nazi-occupied Ukraine. A representative of a foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in turn said in a statement on Friday, Blaise Machiavelli neither knew nor met her paternal grandfather. Blaise's ancestry is characterized by conflict and division, and is the case for many with Eastern European heritage is only partially understood. No, man, for decent people, there is nothing controversial in Eastern Europe. Decent people fought on the right side of history, and as my grandfather did. Only despicable scum of humanity might say that there is something controversial there in Eastern Europe when it comes to history. No, right? Only scum of humanity collaborated with Nazis. And Blaise Machiavelli, even if she did not met grandfather of her, father of her father, well, even if that is the case, information is still interesting, by the way, because that's what British elites are: Nazis and the fascists. Period. They might act to be decent human beings, but they are not, right? And I wonder why she is a Machiavelli, why she is not her Dobrovolsky. Her father was Dobrovolsky, right? Because this Nazi butcher was Dobrovolsky and was a father of Machiavelli. So why she's a Machiavelli? That's also a question that I have. Probably, she did not want this information to become a public about her Nazi roots of her family. Maybe, I don't know, man. But my attitude towards British aristocracy, royal family, and their so-called elites are not going to change by this news, because I knew they were scum of humanity always, right? With or without this information. Vzglyad newspaper is also reporting that there was a massive protest in Belgrade, by the way, against Serbian authorities. According to reports, some 30 to 40,000 people participated in these demonstrations. There was clashes with the police, some disturbances there, but I guess now situation is under control. And the only question I have, what Western ruling class is doing? Vucic already demonstrated that he works for them, right? Serbia under Vucic presidency is supplying weapons indirectly, but supplies weapons to Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. Vucic did not yet recognize Kosovo, but he might actually do it. So he's a puppet of West, man. This despicable individual is a puppet of West. So what is going on with Serbia, man? Why Western ruling class is using their assets and brainwash individuals to destabilize the situation? I don't know. I don't get it, man. But anyways, I have no doubts that Serbia is in a strong grip of collective West, and most likely, if not the Vucic, then next Serbian president most likely will recognize independence of Kosovo and will go full anti-Russian, right? And Russophobic, and probably will move country towards joining EU and NATO. Seems like that is going to be case, which is unfortunate because we are talking about Serbia, but country that, or people, let's say, first of all, it's people, right? People that we always gonna see as our brothers and sisters, but yet again, Western ruling class has strong grip on Serbia, and they're not gonna stop. It's only a matter of time, and Serbia will join EU and NATO, and will become fully anti-Russian. It is what it is. Not the people, by the way. I think majority of Serb people would not buy whatever anti-Russian propaganda they're gonna be fed by media, so-called media, but does it influence anything? I mean, if your government is acting against Russia, against Russians, then sorry, but one way or another, but Moscow will at some point will have to react on that, and that means deterioration of the relationships that Russia don't wants to happen, but yet again, it's not us that pushing towards this, isn't it? I don't know, maybe Serb people will manage to revolt against these traitors and put in power someone like Dodik, leader of Bosnian Serbs. Oh, that will be a great deal of success for the Serbian people, I think, but will it happen? I don't know. Kommersant newspaper, meanwhile, is reporting that NBC, according to NBC's information, US-Iran nuclear talks might take place in the coming days. What a surprise, isn't it? Iranian leadership still willing to talk to US representatives after what had happened when American side used these talks on nuclear program as a deception to catch Iran off guard due to incoming Israeli attack, and still Tehran wants to be engaged with these individuals. I don't know. It seems suicidal to me, but it's up to Tehran. If they want to be engaged in this suicidal action, then let them do it, man. It's their lives, right? So Witkoff will offer the Iranian side to abandon uranium enrichment in exchange for easing sanctions against Tehran. This TV channel NBC has reported. Okay, it's I have no comments, by the way. How can anybody be engaged in a talks with the representatives of US and really believe that these talks might actually be successful in any form? I mean, I don't know. It's just too stupid, for God's sake, man. Too primitive, right? One have to be like an amoeba, for God's sake, with one cell. That's it. Not even brain cell, by the way, just one cell. To believe that you can negotiate with US successfully for anything, man. Let's be real here. You can pretend that you are in talks. I mean, because yet again, unfortunately, US is a major superpower. You might pretend, but to actually trust them, you have to be dumb as hell, by the way, in that case. RIA Novosti is reporting that Iran, meanwhile, bans Grossi, head of IAEA, from nuclear sites. Iran will no longer allow IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi to be present at the country's nuclear facilities and install cameras there, said Deputy Speaker of the Islamic Republic, Haji Babai. We have quote from a statement of this person: "We will no longer give Grossi permission to be present at nuclear sites and install cameras because we saw information about our sites in documents received from the Israeli regime." The ISNA news agency quotes him as saying. And I remind you, dear friends, that several weeks ago there were reports that Iran's intelligence obtained some classified information from Israel. And that's the classified information that this person is referring to. So probably they saw in this classified information data from their nuclear facilities, and only Rafael Grossi and IAEA experts were allowed there, right? So there was spying, actually. This information says, as far as I can tell, that Grossi and his henchmen from IAEA were spying in interests of Israel and probably US. And well, this is good decision. I can understand this decision. They should ban not just Grossi but IAEA completely, and they did, by the way. They're no longer going to cooperate with IAEA, at least for the time being, and all other countries should do the same until IAEA will get rid of these assets of their Western secret services and secret services of Israel, and until this organization truly becomes an international UN body, international and respected UN body. And right now, yet again, one have to be totally down to have any respect for either Grossi or the IAEA, right? It's completely discredited. I mean, 1,000,000%. And Grossi continues to play along with the Western propaganda, with Israeli propaganda. And he stated that Iran can quickly resume uranium production. So they can get in a few months or less several cascades of centrifuges that will spin and produce enriched uranium. You can say that everything is gone and there is nothing there, he told CBS. So you see, Grossi is engaged in a current attack on Washington to force it to further escalate with Iran, to conduct more attacks, right? Because instead of questioning legality of US attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, Western so-called media, including US so-called media, is more focused on our strikes, right? How effective those strikes were, and they are pushing narratives that strikes were not effective. That by doing so, they are basically provoking Washington to go ahead with additional strikes, right? That's what is happening. And Grossi, as many other public figures in the West, including from so-called international organizations, are actively engaged in this push. Total disgrace this Grossi is, by the way. Meanwhile, there are also reports that Iranian authorities have begun clearing the entrances to their underground nuclear complex at the Fordow after they were damaged in recent US airstrikes. Some pictures are circulating on the internet of certain work being done in this direction. And, well, I mean, no surprises there. It's a nuclear facility. Maybe some people are trapped. According to reports, US militaries knew they could not reach a facility itself, which is deep underground, and they bombed their entrances, right? And who knows, maybe there were some people there and they are trapped now. So obviously, Iranian authorities have to clear their area, and if there is anybody trapped, to save them if it's not too late, and to take care of whatever equipment they have in that facility, right? But Iran's Iranian officials were very clear from the beginning that in no circumstances they're going to stop their enrichment program. In no circumstances they're going to cancel their nuclear program, civilian nuclear program. Iran has no military nuclear program, and I don't think they're going to work in the direction of nuclear program, despite these attacks, by the way. I know some commentators on internet, on alternative media, are now exercising probability or opinion on the probability that Iran will move now towards building atomic weapons. But I think Iran will not do this because, yet again, atomic bombs will not make Iran any more safer. I don't think it will make Iran any more safer, or the region, because Iran will acquire atomic bomb or nuclear weapons. Turkey will move towards that direction, Saudi Arabia and other countries in the region. And overall, not just Middle East, but whole world will become much more dangerous place. So that's my take. Although who knows, maybe after these attacks on Iran, local authorities will say, you know what, okay, building nukes is risky. Whole region gonna enter nuclear race, but at least this way we can kind of deter Israel from additional strikes. Maybe that will be their thinking process among some leaders of Iran, and who knows, maybe they will move that in that direction. But I'm still skeptical of that. Iran has and exercised a latent nuclear deterrent, which means that they can build nuclear bombs, but they are not doing so. And Iran is not the only country with such capabilities. I mean, Japan has such capabilities, according to experts. Brazil has such capabilities. South Africa, by the way, has such capabilities. South Africa even get rid of nukes, right, after apartheid regime. Germany has such capabilities, latent nuclear deterrent. And why should not Iran have such a capability? Who says Iran cannot have it? US? It's none of US's business, isn't it? And definitely it's not Israel's business. But anyways, let's continue. RT is reporting that Red Sea ships are faking links to Russia and China to dodge attacks. Last several days, I mean, more and more reports are coming in that vessels in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf, now in the Red Sea, and I guess Arabian Sea, just about everywhere in the Middle East are faking their data, and they're trying to pretend to be connected either with Russia or the China to be safer in an area. And this information, by the way, is not really surprising to me, but might come as a surprise for people especially in the collective West countries that are only receiving news from their propaganda outlets, according to which, well, Russia is isolated, by the way, and no one wants to be associated with Russia or to have close ties with Russia. Well, in reality, if any side is isolated, it's collective West, right? It might not seem like that now, but it is true, by the way. Collective West is more increasingly being separated from the rest of the world. And this process is unstoppable. At this point, I think this process will not stop. And in 5, 10, 15 years' time, we will end up with this two-block situation when on one side there is collective West, on the other side, the rest of the world. But this information is quite interesting because these vessels are not faking their data to pretend to be linked with Israel or with the US or with UK or France, right? And why so? Because in the region, these countries are not respected. They are faking to be linked, they're faking information to pretend to be linked with Russia and China. And why is that? Because Russia and China are respected in the region. That's how it is, right? Like it or not, but it is true. So, yeah. And when it comes to topic of nuclear energy, dear friends, we have this report here that the first power unit of the Akau nuclear power plant in Turkey could be commissioned within a year. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak told the Anadolu agency. And I remind you, dear friends, that this nuclear power plant in Turkey, in Akau, is built by Russia. And even though Western ruling class, Western and countries that they have their puppets in the governments, did try to derail this construction work, process continues, and quite successfully, so much so that in about a year's time, first power unit will become operational. And well, that's quite good news, isn't it? The level of cooperation between Russia and Turkey is constantly increasing, which is a good thing, obviously. Even though I think no one has any illusions in regards to regime in Turkey. Erdogan's regime obviously is quite a dodgy one, and cannot really be trusted by nobody, not just by Russia, but by nobody, right? And I'm not sure if opposition in Turkey will get to power, let's say after next elections. I'm not sure it will change fundamentally policies of the Ankara. No, these dodgy policies of Turkey going to continue. You know, and dodgy, I mean by saying dodgy is that when they are kind of like friends with you and with you and with you and with everybody, but in reality they've been acting against the interests of basically all the countries that they call partners, including Russia, in different ways. But after all, in Damascus now, by the way, it's not Assad is a president, but pro-Turkish regime, right, of the Al Qaeda, basically terrorists. Western propaganda might try to whitewash as much as they want that regime and the terrorists that are in Damascus in charge now, but they are terrorists, by the way. They are affiliates. They used to be part of ISIS and Al Qaeda, and they are still part of it. I don't think one can be member of ISIS, this bloodthirsty, fanatic terrorist group, and then suddenly become a normal human being. No, it's just not possible, isn't it? It's just not possible. So not just Turkey, but also entire collective West, by the way, is now allies of Al Qaeda and ISIS, and they have their proxy regime in Damascus. Well, congrats. I did not know that U.S. militaries were fighting in Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East to basically bring ISIS and Al Qaeda into power in Syria, right? According to legends, at least, U.S. militaries were fighting exactly against ISIS and Al Qaeda. Turned out to be different way. And I'm quite sure many U.S. militaries that pay any attention to developments in this world are, probably quite upset and feel betrayed with everything that had happened in regards to, in this particular case, Syria. But Telegram news is another news, dear friends. I shared this information on Telegram that China warns Philippines against a self-inflicted destruction by housing U.S. missile systems. China's defense ministry has warned the Philippines against the self-inflicted destruction by their housing U.S. missile systems and denounced Manila's plans to encourage fishermen to operate in disputed South China Sea waters. United States has reportedly decided to deploy additional strategic Typhoon missile systems in the Philippines after transporting their mid-range missile launchers to Luzon last year. And well, I don't know if Chinese warnings should be that necessary. I mean, if people in Philippines should think themselves, what they gonna achieve while being a proxy of the U.S. in the region against China. Maybe China and the Philippines do have some territorial issues, some other issues, but those issues, by the way, are least of the problems they will face if and when U.S. will provoke regional war there. Philippines gonna suffer tremendously as Ukraine is suffering, right? and US will sacrifice people of Philippines in a second, as they did with the residents of Ukraine. They would not care. So I don't know, man. I never understood this mentality of this countries that are acknowledging, understanding that they are becoming proxy of one side or another, but they still continue to do so. And then when something happens, right, they are, crying about, and then, aggression against us, unprovoked. I mean, really? You were the reason things happened, right? You being used. And now you think you've been, unjustifiably, treated. Okay. And it's not just about Philippines, by the way. Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, other countries. I mean, thanks God, Vietnam seems like beginning to realize, Vietnamese leadership, that they're gonna lose big time if they will become a US proxy. And they are trying, kind of, with Russian assistance, to normalize relationships with China, right? Despite some issues, by the way, yet again, territorial and others. But yet again, it's better to lose little now than to lose everything later. Because one should understand Chinese power, and one should understand what power Philippines have, what power Vietnam have, or any other countries there, right? It may be not just, and it is not just, by the way, when big countries are operating with kind of different set of rules. But this is a part of human history, right? It was always the case and will be always the case. So either you have to acknowledge objective reality and take steps accordingly, or otherwise you're gonna, if you are in power, then you're gonna destroy your own country, right? And there seems like Philippines are exactly on that trajectory, Filipino leadership, which is crazy. But RT is also reporting that US is terminating trade talks with Canada. I mean, just what I just said, by the way. It seems like for major superpowers, there is a different set of rules, right? It's unjust. It's not okay. It should not be like that. Everyone should have equal, how should I say, equal rights on geopolitical scale, big countries, small countries, and so on. But we are not living in utopia, right? We are living in a real world. And in a real world, US is saying to Canada, you know what? You play by my rules. Otherwise, you're going to find out hard way, right? That's what US, by the way, does to its closest neighbor and ally, Canada. And why is that? Because, yet again, for superpowers, there is a different set of rules. It's not good that it is like that, but it was always how it was always like that in human history, and always going to be like that. So US President Donald Trump has announced the termination of all trade talks with with Canada, in light of Ottawa's tax on digital services, which he called direct and blatant attack on the country. Relations between the neighbors began to soar when Trump imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian goods in February. Soon after taking office, Ottawa responded with reciprocal tariffs. And so, yes, I mean, US gonna bully Canada to submission, right? We all understand that. US gonna bully Canada to submission. And if leadership in US will go ahead to establish complete control over the Greenland, well, they will force Denmark to submission. to give up this territory. Because yes, US is a major superpower, and they are doing stuff that not that many other countries can, isn't it? And compared to US, by the way, I mean, China is acting extremely adequately compared to US. Am I correct? You cannot even compare these two, by the way, right? Yes, China has also interests, and China knows perfectly well that Chinese leadership knows perfectly well that they are next in a line to be attacked by the collective West, and they want to prepare as much as they possibly can. And in this confrontation, in this Cold War between China and the West, smaller countries in the region should stay out, or definitely not sidelined with their powers that are far away, like US is, for example, because they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose this big time, no matter how this conflict between China and US will resolve. These smaller countries in the region, if they will ally themselves with the power that is far away, those countries gonna lose anyways, right? So either stay neutral or seek good relationships with their major powerhouse that is right next to you, right? It does make more sense, especially when you know that US is only in propaganda. US is a democracy and peacemaker and wants to do good for everybody in this world. In reality, because of the US, just in the last several decades, millions of people have been killed, literally killed. And tens of millions of people have lost everything, livelihoods, right? And become refugees, God knows where. And this is not all consequences. Due to criminal actions of US, millions, tens of millions of people are suffering literally on daily basis. Can you say same about China? You cannot. I'm not big Chinese fan, by the way, isn't it? You know that. But let's be real here. If you are looking for to identify main threat for the global South or the world, then look no further than US, man, and the collective West. It's just true, man. So yes, Canada has no chances. Let's say it this way. They will do whatever they are told to do, and it is what it is. Canadian elites, by the way. So also Donald Trump went to brag about big beautiful bill, so-called, and praised the senators who basically pushed for this bill, and the bill was adopted, I believe, with majority votes in the Senate. And many experts are saying that this so-called big beautiful bill is going to be a huge disaster for US, because after all, ceiling, by the way, on US debt is increasing, or gonna increase on 5 trillion, right? And Trump was actually seeking, according to reports, was seeking that there would be no ceiling whatsoever, so that they can print and print and print and print these dollars as much as they like, right? So many experts are thinking that this big beautiful bill will bring tremendous issues for US economy, for US people, citizens. And among these experts are also Elon Musk, who probably knows a thing or two about business and economy, right? He is the richest man on the planet still. And so, yes, he lashes out at the Trump once again. So businessman Elon Musk called US President Donald Trump's spending and the tax bill political suicide. We have a quote from him. Polls show this bill is a political suicide for the Republican Party, he wrote on their social network X. And you know what? This might be the truth, but seems like there is a significant group, significant part of U.S. society which is become like fanatical supporters of Trump. And I don't think using word fanatical is a too strong a word. Those people are really fanatics, right? And they will justify literally anything that Trump will do. And I think these people are maybe even either majority of Republican supporters, or at least there is a 50-50 divide there. So therefore, I'm not sure this bill going to be suicide for Republican Party, or the Trump for that matter, political suicide. Trump just bombed Iran, by the way, illegally, spitting at the U.S. Constitution while doing so. And what? Nothing. Yes, some Republican supporters were upset about it. Some were very upset, but seems like majority is absolutely okay with that, isn't it? They don't care. So therefore, yet again, man, fanatism is dangerous stuff, isn't it? Once people are indoctrinated in some ideas on the level that they are becoming fanatics, then yet again, I mean, those people can be manipulated like that, isn't it? And whomever or whatever personal idea they are, they are in support of, can do no wrong. And therefore, by the way, I don't think either Republicans or Trump gonna commit suicide. They are no longer popular, by the way. And the midterm elections, soon they're gonna be midterm elections, isn't it? And I think Democrats will win all over the places. It's gonna be big fail for Republicans, but this is due to all the lies that Trump was saying during the campaign, and because Trump won thanks to votes from independents, right? Not necessarily from because of the support of Republicans. Republicans will vote for him anyways, but he got significant support from independents, from libertarians, from even Democrats. Some people that were leaning towards the Democrats, but didn't like either previous administration of Biden, or did not believe in Kamala Harris. So they voted for Trump too. But in midterm election, all these people, by the way, gonna stay out of elections, or gonna vote against Republicans. And that's why I think Republicans gonna lose big in midterm elections. Anyways, I'm not an expert in US politics, so let's continue with some other news. RT is reporting that 12,000 German companies, meanwhile, went bust in the last 6 months alone, according to Economic Tracker. 12,000 companies, by the way, in Germany went bust, and that's a 6 months data. In another 6 months, this number will probably reach, I don't know, 20, 25, 30,000. It's crazy, isn't it? So Germany endured their highest wave of corporate bankruptcies in a decade in the first half of this year. Study by economic tracking agency Credit Form has suggested their first 6 months of this year saw some 19,900 German companies go bust. The study released on Thursday indicates the figure represents a 9.4% increase over the same period of last year. So last several years, by the way, especially after collective West escalated with Russia and began this sanctions war and trade war and so on, main economies in Europe began experiencing some very serious differences, isn't it? And main economies actually are in recession. Germany's economy in recession, French economy is in recession. There is manipulation with the numbers, but without, if you take real numbers, then French economy is in recession too, and British economy is in recession. Three top economies in Europe, right? And well, if last year was bad for German economy, then this year is going to be much tougher, because take a look at this number: 9.4% increase in the bankruptcies in just first 6 months. According to agencies, some 141,000 employees worked at the companies are affected now. 141,000 employees, people, by the way, are affected with this wave of bankruptcies. I feel sorry for ordinary people, by the way, but yet again, it's their government, isn't it, that is destroying economy of their own countries. And if they are angry on someone, then they should be angry on their own government and on Brussels bureaucrats, by the way. And I will end new segment, dear friends, on this news that key rate here in Russia may be reduced by the end of 2025 to 13 to 15%, which is going to be great news, by the way, if this will happen. So the parameters of their decline in inflation and their cooling of their country's economy make it possible to reduce their key rate by September to 18%, and by the end of 2025 to 13 to 15%. This was stated to us by the head of Russia's Russian Union of Industrialists and their Entrepreneurs, Alexander Shokhin. He was himself high-ranking official here in Russia in economical bloc. And well, this is a quite prediction, isn't it? And I can confirm, by the way, inflation is under control, under digit numbers right now, isn't it? Economical bloc was quite successful to cool down economy due to of overheating, and now I think, and I was talking about it in previous updates also, I think it is a good enough ground to bring down interest rates by central bank, right? When central bank brings down interest rate, then other banks cannot do the same, right? And so if before end of this year, interest rate will be about 13 to 15%, I mean, it may be too optimistic, this number, but if that can be, then economy gonna receive significant boost, that's for sure. That's for sure. So let's hope it will happen, because current 21% is just crazy, man. It's just crazy. It didn't work. I understand why central bank did it, but now situation is better. Economy is no more overheated. Situation is stable. Inflation is under double digits, so there is no reason to keep this 21%, by the way, because that will continue cooling economy, right? And we don't need no more of that stuff. So this is, if you are interested about economical situation here in Russia, by the way, that's the prediction of one of the experts in the field, and I really hope his prediction will be realized, and before end of this year we will have our like 13 to 15% interest rate. That will make that will give a huge push to construction work, to all sorts of businesses, right, including construction work. Right now, when interest rate is 21%, from central bank and their commercial banks are lending for 25, 26, 30%, man. In such circumstances, obviously, to take a loan is crazy, right? Crazy expensive, and no one is in a hurry to do so. And also, mortgage, you cannot take mortgage on such a interest rate, isn't it? But if it will decrease, then that will definitely boost all the sectors of economy, including construction work. And okay, this is it for news segment, by the way. I shared quite a lot of news, isn't it? Hopefully you find this segment relevant, informative, and well, let's have a chat now. Was there any super chat? So I will. No, Anna, my wife is telling me that there was super chat, so I will react on it. Blorp, thank you very much for your super chat donation. 5 eyes are on their, and Blorp is also commented, 5 eyes on their hands and knees following each other in a circle, smelling saying, you clever boy. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for your comment and a super chat, $5 donation. Was there any more super chat? No. Okay. Okay, so let's have a community chat, dear friends. Now, unbelievable. News segment was 1 hour and 20 minutes, quite a long one. But anyways, let's have a talk now. And as always, dear friends, please use either capital Q before question or capital letters to write entire sentence. That will make it easier to spot the question. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I already began exchanging opinions with Nikos, who wrote that, well, Levan, Putin and some ministers recently pointed out that your economy is in recession, the sanctions and the war have started to work. Why can't Russia borrow debt from China? You have to. This is Nikos's opinion, and I responded to it that it's better to always check your sources, because it is impossible that Putin or any other Russian official would say that Russian economy is in recession, because it's not, right? Maybe Nikos read some, I don't know, man, some propaganda piece in the Western media, or propaganda piece in some quasi-Russian media. There are many media outlets, by the way, that pretending to be Russian that are operating actually from the West, isn't it? And maybe they did write something like that, but no, neither Putin nor any other official here in Russia could say that the economy is in recession, because it's not. Last time I saw numbers, Russian by conservative estimate, Russian economy already grown this year 1.6, 1.8%, up to 2%, right? And I believe before end of this year, this growth will reach maybe 2.5, 3%, maybe 4%, by the way, especially if central bank will start now dropping interest rate, which will definitely accelerate processes inside the economy. So that's why we should always be careful with the sources. I mean, you may see some channels or media outlets that are pretending to be Russian. They are based in the West. They are financed by the Western secret services and Western funds and so on. And they are pushing all sorts of crazy stuff, by the way, about Russia, right? Just don't believe them. You know, ask anybody who actually lives in Russia. You know, so how can anyone say that their economy is in recession when it's just not, right? Even Western financial institutions are not saying that Russian economy is in recession. Neither World Bank nor International Monetary Fund is saying anything like that, isn't it? So always, I mean, we always have to take any information with a pinch of salt, right? Especially nowadays when you know, there's so many fake accounts, so many fake people that are pretending to know something, you know, on internet included, by the way. Not just in MSM, mainstream media, but also in so-called alternative media, by the way. Yesterday, I saw one American channel, by the way, US channel. Former military is is a host of that channel, allegedly former military, I don't know. And you know what headline was? About some catastrophic losses of Russian Air Force, man. And the last several days, yesterday especially, Kiev regime was pushing some narratives that they struck Russian airfield, and they were using videos from 2023, by the way, or 2022. That's what is happening. And if you don't know any better, or don't know any channels that actually tells you what is going on, then you might watch that video and see, oh, you know what, Russians don't have no more aircrafts whatsoever. Which is not the case, but okay, anyways. Questions. Sorry, dear friends, if I'm gonna miss your question, but Miki is commenting, most NATO stuff was designed in the 80s to dig in and defender, not to mobile ops. Yes, I mean, NATO equipment, by the way, is intentionally designed to be bad, right? And I explained what I mean. NATO equipment is even rifles, by the way. Nothing to be said about tanks and their infantry fighting vehicles and jets and so on. Even rifles are over-engineered, and they are breaking down more often for that, right? Because maintenance for a Western military-industrial complex, maintenance of their whatever equipment they sell is much more profitable than selling this equipment itself, right? And that's why take any equipment, by the way, last several decades, let's say, last 20, 30, 40 years, take any weapon system that was produced in the West and tell me if that equipment is not over-engineered. It is always over-engineered, and that is done intentionally, because obviously military-industrial complex knows that this overcomplicated stuff, there is a much higher chances that this overcomplicated stuff will break down. Something will go wrong, right? And so they will receive an order to do maintenance. And even, by the way, some might say, you know what, yes, but there is some checks and balances in place. Usually maintenance done by third parties. In some countries, yes. Not in all countries, by the way. In majority of cases, company that produces equipment does maintenance too, right? But who tell you that these very same companies are not creating third parties, additional companies that formally are independent, but in reality are part of this corporation, isn't it? So there is two different schools, by the way, that in the West and let's say former Soviet Union went when it comes to military equipment. In Soviet Union, main task was to do simple and easy to do maintenance as possible. All the weapons, by the way, built on that principle, from AK to T-72 and tanks and so on, right? That was the main principle. In the West, it's opposite. Do complicated stuff so that you will make money not just by selling it, but also even more money while doing maintenance for it, right? So I agree with you absolutely. I mean, NATO military equipment is overhyped for sure, but is come on, man. It's not for a real war, isn't it? It's for show. But when it comes to a real war, why you need 100? If you, from your 100 tanks, by the way, 50 will break down even before they will reach front line. I mean, do you really need this overhyped 100 tanks? No, you better buy 50 tanks then, but designed in a way that they will actually work. Questions. Dear friends, capital Q before question will help her. What I saw question. Don Zugar is commenting. Levan, have you visited the Jewish oblast in Russia? What is it like? No, I have not. It's in the Far East. Еврейская автономная область. I have not been there. By the way, I mean, I'm quite sure it's nice place, wonderful nature, wonderful people, everything. And Russia is so big, dear friends, and I have not been anywhere. Really, I mean, in North Ossetia, in some parts of Caucasus, Moscow region, and that's it really. So, maybe one day I will be in a position to take family to travel around Russia, at least once in the summer and once in the winter, because there is so many places, by the way, to see, isn't it, to visit. It's biggest country in the world, so you can imagine how wonderful many places are. But unfortunately, I have not had the opportunity to travel so far. Questions. Let me remind you, dear friends, that yes, I mean, you can support my work and this channel through PayPal, Boosty. You can subscribe to my Patreon. That will be great support also. And during the streams, you can use Rumble, by the way, for support. You can donate through Rumble or become a premium subscriber. Question from Apocalypso. Is it possible that Serbian protesters are pro-Russian, angry at the Vucic for selling weapons to Ukraine? As far as I can tell, these protests are organized from the West, and even Vucic's government is not saying anything else. Yet again, by the way, issue with Vucic is that even if he and his government will obey 95% of orders from the West, this 5%, I mean, West wants 100% obedience, right? And only issue West has now with Vucic is basically recognition of Kosovo. That's all. If Vucic recognizes Kosovo, Western ruling class would not care if he will stay in power for another 50 years. But he is, and also West wants Serbia to cut ties with the patriots of Serbia in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is also a topic. So if Vucic does that, and that's it, he can stay in power, become a dictator for the next 50 years, Western ruling class would not care. But Vucic did not recognize Kosovo's independence and did not at least fully cut ties with Bosnian Serbs. And that's the reason why West wants to get rid of him. Also, officially, Serbia did not join anti-Russian sanctions, officially, right? But yet again, under Vucic's government, Serbian military-industrial complex was selling weapons indirectly, but selling weapons to this Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. So, So therefore, I mean, I think I'm not in Serbia, obviously, and members of our community from Serbia can explain better what's going on there. But I think Western ruling class is absolutely controlling the situation there. These protesters are directed by Western ruling class, their assets in Serbia, and I don't think they are pro-Russian or pro anything. Majority of them probably being paid or brainwashed. That's it. That's how West is operating, by the way, through NGOs and through other means. They just brainwash people or buy up people. That was case in Georgia. That was case in Armenia. They try to do the same in Russia, and they are doing it in Serbia for how many decades now, by the way. Nidish Kumar is commenting, Levan, why can't Serbia ask Chinese help to control their situation by providing intelligence? No, Serbia will ask her. First of all, who gonna ask China, by the way? Vucic is a pro-Western leader. He is a not independent leader or pro-multipolar world leader, or he is a Western-controlled leader, right? We cannot fail to this false narrative that, well, he is a kind of neutral. He is not neutral. He is a Western asset. And he is a product of previous revolution that had happened in Serbia, right? Many people forget that Serbia already experienced this so-called regime change. And their current government is a product of that regime change, right? Only reason why Vucic and his government been attacked by the collective West is, as I said, because Belgrade not yet recognized, under current leadership, did not recognize independence of Kosovo, did not cut completely ties with the Serbian patriots in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Republika Srpska, as it called. And also, Serbia officially didn't join anti-Russian sanctions, although actively engaged in providing weapons to Kiev regime. That's all the topics that Western has some issues with Serbia, nothing else. Vucic is a Western asset, In his government, there are some people that I believe are pro-Serbian, right? But Vucic himself is a Western asset, brother. Fonger is commenting, Xi and Putin, Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Russian President Putin share the same vision for their respective people, and the world is what the West refused to see and they can't accept. Well, they cannot accept. Western ruling class, all they care about themselves and their influence, right? They cannot accept losing influence. They are struggling with that. They are struggling with objective reality. They are struggling with the emergence of multipolar world. That's why they are hostile to Russia, to China, to everybody who even questions dominance of the West, right? Questions. Once again, dear friends, sorry if I miss your question. The best way is, if you want to support my channel and same time highlight some topic during this community chat, you can send your question either through what is called, by the way, super chat on Rumble or through PayPal. I will react on question during the stream itself. Also, Nidish Kumar is asking, Levan, China is clear aggressor in the case of Philippines claiming lands by mentioning some ancient maps. Every nation can do that. Yet again, Nidish, I'm not saying that what China is doing in regards to disputed territories in South China Sea, let's say, is correct or nice stuff. I don't think so. I really don't think so. If you take a look at some islands, by the way, those islands are immensely far away from Chinese shore and are right next to other countries, right? Vietnam, for example, or the Philippines, in case of Philippines. So I don't think it's a nice stuff what China is doing. But yet again, we all understand, isn't it, that major superpowers, that was our human history forever, that for major superpowers, I mean, there is a certain set of rules, right, that they are playing with, and other countries, smaller countries, not that powerful countries, cannot afford to do so. If Philippines was in the position of China, probably they will do the same, or maybe even something crazier. We just don't know, isn't it? It's not just China. In India, by the way, does India tries to manipulate in the region and have some influence here and there? In Bangladesh, I know for India it was very painful to lose kind of Bangladesh, especially after what India done for Bangladeshi people and for their independence and safety and security. Does India has some influence and interests in Sri Lanka? Some other places, nothing to be said about Pakistan about it. Of course, point is how influential is India? Stronger India will become economically, financially, militarily, bigger the influence is going to be, isn't it? And you are telling me that well, New Delhi will not try to increase its influence over other in a region there. No, of course India will try to improve its geopolitical position as much as possible. And India is on that path, by the way. Give it 20, 30 years and India is going to be, I will argue, one of the top 4 superpowers. Definitely in top 5. But in 20, 30 years, I can see four superpowers in this world. US, China, Russia, India. That's the 4 superpowers that I can see, right? European Union not gonna survive. European Union not gonna become some major geopolitical player. I mean, in 20, 30, 40 years, continental Europe and also UK, by the way, gonna become a loosely relevant or completely irrelevant part of this world, right? Only a few countries there will manage to maintain some good position, relatively speaking, and this only in case if they will manage to have a good relationship with Russia. Europe is doomed, by the way, right? So I understand what you are talking about, Nidish. I'm not justifying Chinese actions in South China Sea because I don't think that is correct, right? That is just when you taking some atolls, by the way, building islands there, and then are claiming all this territory and also 12 miles from the island itself as your economical zone. And when you're expanding your your territories, let's say, with dodgy ways, I don't think that is good way. I don't think that is just stuff, but well, that's what superpowers do, man. That's what they do. That was the case historically speaking, always. When certain countries are just too powerful, they are acting in certain way. And if we then compare superpowers with each other, I mean, take a look at the China and take a look at the US. I mean, compared to US, China is acting extremely mildly, right? And diplomatically even compared to US. And one should keep in mind that US, by the way, is built on the territory of other peoples, other civilizations, right? And even nowadays, by the way, US is, US leadership is openly acknowledging their imperialistic ambitions to take over Canada, take over Greenland, and to do all that kind of stuff, right? So that's what is happening. And it will be, I mean, if we are realists, it will be better for regional countries not to mess with the superpowers. It never ends well. You mess with superpower, you're gonna get smashed, right? You may give a good fight. For example, let's remember war between Soviet Union and Finland. Did Finns give a good fight to Soviet Union? Yes, they fought bravely, undoubtedly. Did they lose? Anyways, yes, they did. And eventually they were forced to give up more territories, actually, that initially Soviet Union was asking. Soviet Union didn't start war straight away. Soviet Union was asking to exchange territories because that was needed to secure Leningrad region, right? Navigation routes and so on. And Helsinki did not listen. Okay, then Soviet Union took some action, and as a result, Finland lost even more. So would not it be better if Finland would say, you know what, okay, I mean, we may don't like it, but let's do some compromise, exchange territories here and there, and so that, you know, this giant neighbor is happier, and at least we're not gonna enter the war, right? So Philippines can use this logic that, you know what, if we fight China now, if we are used as a proxy by the US, we're gonna get smashed and we're gonna lose much more than we might lose right now if we normalize relationships with China. Or even everything. And same goes for every other country, by the way. Yet again, it's not just, by the way, when some countries have much more power and their authority than others. But we are not living in an ideal world, right? We are living in this world with certain rules, and it is what it is. Questions. Dear friends, Nidish Kumar, as always, very active in the chatter with questions. Thank you thank you all, dear friends, for being here, for joining the stream, and many thanks to you, Nidish, for questions. Levan, how will bringing down interest rate will affect ruble? Well, ruble will hopefully lose a little bit of strength because it is becoming dangerously strong, by the way. Ruble has become dangerously strong for Russian economy, for Russian businesses, for Russian budget even. I mean, many experts, I'm not expert in finances, isn't it? But many experts are saying that optimal level for ruble is to be about like 100, 110. That was my take also, and I was sharing this information with you. Maybe 120 or higher for a dollar, because in that case, federal budget and regional budgets will receive more rubles, because Russian economy is export-oriented economy, isn't it? Russia is selling much more than buys. So therefore, there is a big amount of foreign currencies, all sorts of foreign currencies, right, in hands of businesses. And when they pay taxes, they exchange these foreign currencies into rubles, right? So if ruble is weaker, then during exchange, while these companies pay taxes, federal and regional budgets receiving more rubles, right? Also, when ruble is weaker, Russian export companies are also benefiting more, right? Balance has to be kept, obviously. Some golden middle has to be found, and that's the job of central bank and finance ministry. But right now, let me check, dear friends. Right now, exchange rate is about like 78 rubles for a dollar, which is crazy, man. This is no good for Russian economy. Absolutely not. Where is the interest rates? I will check right now. I believe it's 78, maybe even less, Yes, I mean 78.47 rubles for $1 and 92.28 rubles for €1. Ruble is too strong for currently. I mean, just too strong. And if interest rates will drop, that will obviously stimulate banks and also businesses and the public to take more money from the banks. So more cash will circulate in economy, and that will probably weaken ruble at least somewhat. And I think that will benefit federal budget, regional budgets, export businesses, export-oriented businesses, and that would not create high inflation. Because businesses, Russia is a free market economy, isn't it? And businesses, by the way, when ruble was like 3-4 months ago, when ruble was about 100 rubles for a dollar, businesses already increased prices, right? And they did not bring down those prices much since then, even though ruble became this strong. Ruble gained some, like, I don't know, 30% or something, isn't it, in last several months. And therefore, if ruble will become weaker, that will benefit economy big time, and prices not gonna jump too much, right? Inflation gonna be kept in check, below double digits. I have no doubts about that. So, let's see how will things develop. But this stronger ruble, by the way, is hurting Russian economy big time. It's a wrong understanding when some people think stronger the your currency, they're better. No, it's not the case, by the way. China, for decades, intentionally is weakening yuan, right? For a reason. They don't need strong yuan. They need their economy to benefit from their currency. And yet again, obviously, I'm not a financial expert. So, I'm just sharing my take on the situation. Questions. I see a question. Smoky Sally is commenting. Most food manufacturers moved to Mexico and Canada. Tariffs seriously affect food supplies for U.S. consumers. NAFTA under press. Clinton caused companies to move. Smoky Sally is commenting. Thank you, Sally, for sharing your take on the situation, your information. Well, tariffs will hurt, obviously. Tariffs will hurt big time, and higher the tariffs, then higher gonna be prices in for U.S. consumers, and in some cases, certain goods gonna even potentially disappear from their shelves because they will become just too expensive. There will be no demand on the products, and some companies probably will stop exporting certain stuff into US. I mean, there was initially I was thinking that this tariff war that Trump began was focused on more on Europe, to basically force manufacturers there to move to US, and this process is happening already anyways because of the high energy cost in Europe. But then Trump went to tariff entire world, and that was step too far, I think, and that's why eventually Washington was forced to back down on this tariff wars. But who knows what they're gonna do tomorrow? Nidish Kumar is asking, are those bulbs behind you antiques? I mean, these ones, or bulb is what is bulb? is or paint. Nothing is antique here, by the way. I'm renting this flat. I cannot tell you history behind the paints or the anything, but there is nothing antique here. No. Questions. Also, Nidish Kumar is commenting, Levant, but we don't claim lands like China. If we want to, according to old maps, we can claim entire subcontinent, even Tibet as well. Yes, Nidish, I agree with you. As I said, I'm not big Chinese, supporter, isn't it? If you ask me, India is the number one strategical partner for Russia, in my reading of the big picture, right? And we Russia and India should be strategical partners forever, especially to make sure that China will, act accordingly, So we will check. We will keep China in check. We will try at least, right? Together. So therefore, I'm not big Chinese fan. Let's be real here. But same time, I'm realistic, isn't it? I'm realistic. China is a major superpower, and as US is, by the way. And when certain civilization or the country reaches that level, then they can do something that no other countries can. No smaller or less influential countries can. It does not make these actions that China is doing, for example, in, let's say, South China Sea, justified or legit or approvable. No. But yet again, what you're going to do about it, right? They can do it, and yet again, we can always compare what China is doing, being this major superpower, and what US was doing and how US was behaving. I like two different worlds, isn't it? And that's why I think Chinese dominance in the world economy is not going to be as devastating for the world as US or the Western dominance was. And China going to dominate, isn't it? We have to be realistic. Either you accept reality and reacting on real stuff, or then you are, otherwise you are living in some imaginary world and you're going to lose constantly. So let's be realists. Chinese economy will dominate this world for best of 21st and potentially 22nd century, at least first half of 22nd century, right? Give it 30 to 50 years, India gonna become our second major economy in this world, right? And India gonna start catching up with China. Give it 30 to 50 years max. According to experts, by the way, that I come across opinions of the experts. And when India will be in a similar position as China is right now, as you said, based on old maps and based on this and that, India can claim and do many things. And yes, India will do this because India will behave. This is human civilization. This is human history. India will behave in a very same way as every other civilizations when they reach that top level, right? Difference is going to be only difference we're going to see is will be based on countries and the cultures, right? As I said, China, US was a creation of expansionism, right? European expansionism. US is creation of the settlers, right? They genocide local people there, create US first, genocide local local people, all these European settlers. Then they gained sort of independence from London, okay, but that was not enough. They brought some states. I mean, many people in US maybe don't even know that certain states, significant parts of US were actually brought from other countries, right? And not just Alaska, by the way, that was purchased from Russia. France sold some territories and some other countries too. And that was also not enough. Then they went to take almost half of Mexico. Many people don't realizing that it's not just parts of California or the Texas used to be Mexico. No, all of it used to be Mexico. And US occupied half of the country and just took it. So now, and I mean, what about all the wars that US was engaged in the 20th century and also in 21st century? And now compare that to China. That is a huge difference, isn't it? Because there is a difference based on mentality of the people, of their political class, and the elites accordingly. And therefore, China is behaving very differently. I'm quite sure India will behave when India will reach that level of being a major superpower, and India will reach that level. Just give it 30 years, by the way, 30, 40, 50 years. When India will be on top of the game, right? And only China will be competitor, sort of. Then India will also do some stuff that no other countries would be able. And the only difference in behavior will, be based on, yet again, traditions, culture, history, and so on. Right? So I think India's dominance in this world also not going to be as dramatic for the humanity as Western dominance was, because Western dominance was total disaster, right? Genocide after genocide after genocide after genocide. They rob entire world, for God's sake, right? Literally, they rob practically entire world, and all the richness of the collective West is based on that they rob practically all of humanity, man. I don't think India will ever do that, or the China. But Europeans did. European elites, let's say, right? And their allies. So, as I said, Nidish, in no circumstances I'm going to justify what China is doing. I'm just trying to explain to myself also what is going on, isn't it? To have a better understanding. If it was up to, if US was there, by the way, based on behavior or record of US will already obliterate Philippines. US will already neutralize all their separatist elements in Taiwan, million times over, by the way, right? US will already neutralize South Korea, Japan. They will destroy just about everybody in the surroundings, right? If it was US there. But China is behaving differently, right? And all they do now, really, I don't think they are looking for more territories. What they do is they want to secure themselves, because they know they are target, right, of the collective West, and they want to protect themselves. And can you deny them such a right? Questions. Well, I guess that's it. Dear friends, sorry if I miss your question. We've had a good conversation, isn't it? I hope you find the news segment interesting, and also this chat exchange of opinions. Many thanks to all of you, dear friends, for your attention this Sunday. I wish you a great weekend. I wish you a great weekend, and see you tomorrow. Bye for now.